documentation changed. The idea of it, the notion of it, it changed from a necessary evil to a capital driving, revenue driving component.
So now how do you determine that the right tools are working for your documentation process?
And the magic of it all is making it all appear on your documentation portal.
Now, in your experience, what are the most critical components of an effective documentation toolchain?
And with the benefit of AI as your co-pilot, it makes you a much more stronger person in terms of your knowledge.
Any metrics that you measure particularly while doing these trainings programs?
And this for me was the unbelievable moment that allowed me to understand that this is.
Welcome to the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast. With us today, we have Laura Norwich, lead technical writer at Salesforce. Hi, Laura. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for the opportunity.
The pleasure is ours, Laura. Now, I'm very eager to know a lot more about you. So please feel free to explain how did you get into this professional journey and who's your inspiration and how are you enjoying so far?
I've been a technical writer for quite a few years. I started back in 1997. So I've been with many different companies over the course of my career. And influences I'll go into, I guess, later. There's quite a few. But one of the reasons why I entered into technical communication was I feel, and still feel this way, that instruction is part of my soul. So I started as a teacher, teaching English as a second language to adults and to children in colleges and in even elementary schools and nursery school. And eventually I got to the point where this wasn't going to be a lucrative career for me. And in order to support my family, I needed to look elsewhere. Friends of mine were already technical writers, and they said to me, Laura, this is what you should be looking at. You're a natural. This would be great for someone who loves to educate. And they were right. So after careful consideration, I enrolled in a quick course, and a few months later found my first job and honestly never looked back. And it's been, a very amazing career for me. So amazing that I even recruited both my husband and my daughter to join me in the effort. And now they're both technical writers as well.
Oh, wow. So just out of curiosity, what kind of conversations do you have around the dinner table then?
Honestly, sometimes we're arguing over the Oxford comma. Sometimes we're arguing over the use of hyphens, but ultimately we're arguing over good user instruction and design.
All right. Very interesting, Laura. Now, I'm sure you've got, as you mentioned, your experience is immense. And now, in your experience, what are the most critical components of an effective documentation toolchain?
So in my experience, the most critical component of effective documentation toolchain would include compatibility and integration. And this is especially true with technical communication, where authoring tools, graphics tools, publishing systems don't always work seamlessly together. Sometimes it's less like assembling Lego pieces and more like forcing pieces from different puzzle boxes to fit in together, trying to make things that don't naturally belong with each other to belong. But beyond the technical interoperability of tools, what's even more important is how effectively people use them. A well-integrated tool chain is only good as a team behind it. So ensuring the writers are using the tools properly, efficiently, and to their fullest potential is the key. And this includes taking advantage of, features such as, content reuse or structured authoring, automation, and collaboration. And when all of these things are integrated and this process is streamlined and friction is reduced, work just becomes easier and more productive. And that makes everyone more motivated as well.
Absolutely. Very well said, Laura. The tools are just only there to assist you and not to reduce your work, right? So now how do you determine that the right tools are working for your documentation process? Particularly, I'm sure you've got a mixture of technical as well as a non-technical contributors in the organization. So how do you know that the tools are working?
So not every tool chain will fit every organization. So my experience may not apply to all of our listeners out there. But one thing you do need to consider is this. When selecting your tools, you need to decide who is actually writing and contributing to the documentation. Sometimes it's not just technical writers. It could include developers, product managers, support teams, and sometimes even marketing.
Yeah.
And once you understand who your contributors are, the tools that they're using, and their level of expertise, the next step is to find their comfort level with those different tools. Developers might prefer something lightweight and code adjacent, like Markdown in VS Code, or adding comments to an existing API in order to auto-generate documentation. Product teams may be more comfortable documenting Confluence, marketing teams, WordPress, support teams maybe in Salesforce. The key is to meet people where they are, especially if they're frequent contributors. Asking a non-writer to work in a structured authoring tool with a steep learning curve will create resistance and slow everything down.
Very nicely put, Laura. Now, again, in relation to the same question, how do you make this whole environment work flexibly, both non-technical and the technical contributors?
So to make it work flexibly, you have to have a system in place that allows for contributors to contribute content with the tools that they're comfortable with. And the magic of it all is making it all appear on your documentation portal. So if you have a omni-channel portal where you're able to pull from different sources and have it all be represented as one piece, as if one author wrote it, that's where the magic is. And making that happen requires you to have carefully guided templates and carefully guided structures so that each contributor understands what they're meant to do and how they're meant to do it.
Great. So are there any particular training that you do or you have in mind when it comes to, engaging the non-technical writers in this process?
So with a non-technical person or non-technical writer, often what inhibits them is finding information at a level of their understanding, right? So there are plenty of sources out there that will help people understand technology at a level of that they're ready to understand it at. And there are communities such as Write the Docs, where people can actively find out that information. There are thousands of users there, and each channel within Write the Docs Slack allows you to pinpoint the area that you're most interested in learning about. And from a simple question, you'll be able to get thousands of answers from the very supportive community. In addition, now with the availability of AI, information is more accessible than ever before. You can research everything and anything from brain surgery down to nanotechnology. And with the benefit of AI as your co-pilot, it makes you a much more stronger person in terms of your knowledge. And then what happens is when you meet a subject matter expert, you are more prepared. And that preparation will allow you to feel more confident. And once you're more confident, then you'll take more steps to increase your knowledge level. And you'll no longer be that non-technical technical writer anymore.
True. Any metrics that you measure particularly while doing these trainings programs?
So one of the biggest metrics I use in training is how well does a trainee take a skill that is learned and adapt it to something else. I don't want to see a trainee who only works off of things that are spoon-fed to them. I want to see them develop. I want to see them grow, and I want to see them apply the skills that they've learned to something that is new.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Now, moving on to the rapid fire round questions, Laura. The first one is, I'm sure you read a lot of resources, particularly on the documentation side. Anything in specific that you would like to highlight to our audiences today?
Sure. So there's a few places I go to for information. Let me spell them out for you. So one of them is, again, Write the Docs Slack. Another site that I use frequently is the Content Wrangler. They have a lot of webinars there, and you can learn about all types of industry trends. And I go to that site pretty often.
Okay.
In terms of blogs, I follow Tom Johnson's blog, I'd Rather Be Writing, as well as Fabrizio Ferri Bendetti's Passo Uno. Both of these blogs are amazing in terms of their content and in terms of how much content that is there. There's just a ton of information there to help you learn all about all different aspects of technical documentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those resources, Laura. Now, one word that comes to your mind when I say documentation.
This word, I don't know if anyone has used it, but if they have, I'd love to meet them. The word is value.
Okay.
So when I think of value in documentation, I picture how product documentation directly enhances a user experience. And this, for me, was the unbelievable moment that allowed me to understand that this is the career I was meant to have.
Okay.
When I see users read documentation or follow documentation and connect with a product, that's all I need.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sense of achievement or making somebody understand from your own words is unimaginable. I can see. Right. Now, a piece of advice to your 20-year-old self.
So, a piece of advice for my 20-year-old self, it's a long way ago, but I'd actually tell myself, don't try to learn it all at once. Focus on mastering one little thing at a time by making small steps and marginal gains. And that's how you make progress.
Okay, nice one. Nice one, Laura. Now, I know I try to ask as much as possible with the given time, but then please, Laura, feel free to add anything more that you would like to highlight today.
Sure, I can highlight a few things if you want to go back to, I can give some examples of different things if you like, if that makes sense to you.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned about Toolchains, and I can cite a couple examples of how this actually worked and the results that I actually saw.
Sure.
So in one case, I was hired as a sole technical writer for a company that had a bunch of developers. It was a startup, they were scrappy, and they had a solution already in place for their documentation. It was a Docs as Code toolchain. And when I was hired, I was told, Laura, if you can get the developers to write the documentation and join you in the effort, you will have mastered a lot. So I said, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and dive right in to a company whose technology I didn't even understand at first. So I relied on the developers to give me at the very least a first draft of what the documentation was supposed to be and look like. Having the docs stay in the current existing tool chain and having me learn those tools was actually the best idea, because it kept the 25 contributors happy because they were already in their happy place. And it meant that I was orchestrating the documentation and keeping everything going and improving it over time. So that's exactly what happened. And not only did the 25 technical writers stay writing documentation, I recruited some more as well.
All right.
So, and what was interesting is that documentation changed. The idea of it, the notion of it, it changed from a necessary evil to a capital driving, revenue driving component.
Wow.
And that change where everyone's is suddenly focused on documentation, where there's no way we're going to sell a product without documentation, where it's not, where the definition of done means it's documented. That change would never have happened if I had introduced a tool chain that the developers couldn't use. So
Yeah.
because I met them as an equal partner and told them I was going to advocate for them to have things be the way that they were comfortable doing, it meant that they were more enthusiastic about the whole process.
Makes sense. Wow. That's a thank you for sharing this experience. It really, I can't say how it works, but then we can clearly see how if everybody works together, great things can be achieved.
Yeah. And on the other end of the spectrum, I had another situation where my audience for contributors were product managers. They were the experts in the product. And they told me that they spent countless hours creating videos for customers, holding their hands, explaining things to them because the documentation just wasn't effective. It wasn't adequate. So I said, okay, what tools do you enjoy writing with? And they told me without any hesitation at all, Confluence. I said, okay, fine, we'll use Confluence. And the next thing I know, we created a knowledge base out of Confluence. We escalated from 300 articles to 2,000 articles within a year. And all the product managers were contributing to the documentation effort. We also hired an additional writer along the way. And together we created this ecosystem where documentation shined. And then once we got that knowledge base working, we said, okay, let's redesign our doc portal.
Yep.
And we did. And we made it something that everyone was proud of, so that when customers were being prospected and sales were talking to them, those discussions revolved around our doc portal. And again, what happened is that now the focus changes and all of a sudden documentation becomes something of value. And for me, personally, it becomes a source of pride.
Very true. Wow, that's amazing two experiences, Laura. And thank you so much for sharing this. And I'm so glad I asked you that last question. Now, thank you so much again for your time and all the very best for your future projects. And I'm sure you're going to do much more wonders in the coming years. So
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledgebase Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.